Okay, so let's get back into our coverage over the X-Men. Really, we have to jump back over to X-Force, and we have not really talked about X-Force in a good while because, well, we had to do a lot of Wolverine comics, but hey, you know what? We're done with Wolverine for the time being, so now it's time for us to get deep into some more X-Force comics, even though the artwork is not that really amazing, but the stories are somewhat good to cover. Now, for the next couple of days on our channel here, we're going to cover a lot of X-Force books and then jump back over to the other X titles. Now, with that being said, today's story is going to be about the idea of the return of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But before we are able to actually dive into the whole concept of the return of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, we have to pick up with Deadpool. Now remember, Deadpool around this time in Marvel Comics was still a new character. We're still learning everything about the character. All we knew at this point in time that, well, he's working for somebody known as Mr. Tolliver. And apparently Tolliver wanted the Juggernaut, but also Black Tom as well. So at the end of our last video, when it came to X-Force fighting against those two characters, Deadpool at the very last second was able to save both of them and bring them back over to Mr. Tolliver. And then you have Tolliver say, you know what, this is great, but first let's get some doctors to fix up Black Tom, but now my plans may continue on. And that's the only time we are actually able to see see Mr. Tolliver in the opening pages of this chapter. But now we can jump over to the whole concept of the return of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Now, let me say real quick, around this time Marvel Comics, you didn't have the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants for a very good reason why. So at first, you have Magneto being the one to lead the original version of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. You then had Mystique take up the mantle as the leader, but after that, you then had the different members of the Brotherhood begin to work for the government, and they were called Freedom Force, but that deal fell through. And so with that deal falling through, you're now having Toad trying to bring back a new version of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Now at this point in time, it's him and the Blob. Now these two characters are trying to bring in somebody else to join their ranks, and that will be Carl Lycos. Now, Carl Lycos first appeared back in, I want to say, X-Men number 60 back in the 1960s. Now, for Carl Lycos, you really know him for his alter ego, Siren. And I really hope I pronounced that name correctly, guys. I know he's a classic character. I try my best, but sometimes my speech just messes me up. But when it comes to Siren, Siren is a classic X-Men villain. Now, the whole point of Carl Lycos was that when he was a young boy, him and his father actually explored an area called Terra del Fuego, and I really hope I pronounced that last word correctly as well. But while being there, they found some mutated dinosaurs, to be more exact, pterodactyls. Now, one of those mutated pterodactyls actually bit Carl when he was a young boy, but over time, it seemed like he was just okay. But then he learned that he had the ability to actually, well, you know, absorb other people's life energy. And that brought in the X-Men when he was trying to absorb Havoc's energy. And when doing that, well, it unlocked his alter ego, his human-like dinosaur version of a pterodactyl. Now, the only way he is able to actually keep that form is if he is able to continue to absorb other people's life energy. But a lot of times, when he is that other form, is a completely different person. It's kind of like Bruce Banner in the Hulk, where you have Bruce and you have the Hulk. Two different personas. Now, with that being said, you have Toad and also Blob saying, we want you to join in the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But now we have to jump over to the character known as Gideon. Now, we have actually talked about this character before, but we're still learning more about the actual character by this point in our coverage over X-Force. All we technically know is that Gideon was a close friend of Sunspot, but apparently Gideon had killed off the father of Sunspot, which didn't allow Sunspot to actually take over the company. Now, for Gideon, we already know that this guy is a bad guy, so that means that there must be a good reason why he had killed off the father of Sunspot to allow Sunspot to take over the company. And really, you have Gideon kind of controlling the company through Sunspot, because the young man has no idea how to run the company, but his close friend Gideon does. And so you have Gideon trying to lead Sunspot into the ways of how to run a company. But at the end of our last video, when it came to X-Force, they did have a run-in with Gideon, because Gideon and Sunspot were technically being held as hostages by Black Tom and Juggernaut, while they were, pulling off a semi-terrorist attack at the World Trade Center. And so you had X-Force doing their best to take down the bad guys. But you have Gideon right now on live television telling a completely different story by saying, no, Cable and X-Force are not good mutants. They are bad mutants. And matter of fact, they have an agenda. Their agenda is to push the idea that mutants should take over the world. They should be first class, that mutants are tired being suppressed down by the human race. But for Gideon, he's saying mutants are not being pushed down by the human race. That matter of fact, the humans are trying to work with the mutants, which honestly is completely not true. But for Gideon, he's saying that right now. And so with him saying that, but also pushing the idea that X-Force are actually bad people who may have been working with Black Tom and Juggernaut, who just pulled off a terrorist attack, now X-Force is technically most wanted. But now we have to jump back over to, well, James Prowlstar, better known as Warpath. Now, this section alone is really more the idea of reminding us, why did Warpath join X-Force? Well, you see, when it came to his tribe, they were all killed off. You see, he came back home thinking that he'll now live a quiet life, to only find out that his entire tribe was killed off and now he's the last man standing. But he also found a Hellfire Club mask that was left behind that kind of told him it was the Hellfire Club that killed off his entire tribe. And he believes it was Emma Frost because he was part of the Hellions, and the Hellions were Emma Frost students. And well, Emma Frost was part of the inner circle of the Hellfire Club. But now we have to jump over to Shadowstar. Now, for you big fans out there of Shadowstar, please do not go out of your way telling us the entire story of the character, because right now at this point in our coverage over X-Force, we don't know much about him, just a tad bit. But we do see him currently in the danger room just trying to work out, except then he is confronted by Pharell. Now, can I say real quickly that I'm not a huge fan of Pharell, and the only reason why, because around this time in Marvel Comics, there was another character that was, similar to Pharell, and that was Wolfbane. But they pushed Wolfbane off the New Mutant team, and now she's on X Factor. But to replace her, we now have Pharell. Now, we're still learning about the character, but we do know that Pharell does have a wild side to her, meaning the idea that sometimes she actually does go feral. But also, it seems that she might have a crush on Shadowstar, and she's trying to tell him, like, hey, when you're free, you and I should do some dirty stuff in the bedroom. But we also see that X-Force is now going to receive another new team member, and that would be Siren. Now, Siren is actually the daughter of Banshee, and really her powers are just like her father's powers. But when it comes to Siren, she's also the niece to Black Tom. Now, in our last video for X-Force, she was trying her best to stop her uncle, but the problem was her uncle and the Juggernaut was just too much for her to handle, and so luckily X-Force was there to help out. But now, because X-Force is technically been labeled as most wanted thanks to Gideon, she's kind of like, you know what, it's probably best for me to stay here with you guys to have some kind of cover, to have some kind of backup, but also I have nowhere else to go. And so bam, just like that, she had joined X-Force. But now we have to jump over to Washington, D.C. to pick up with good old G.W. Bridge, Nick Fury, Henry Gyrich, and also Val Cooper. Now, here's the thing. You have all four characters currently talking about the idea of what to do with Cable. Because for Henry Gyrich, he's down with the idea of just go ahead and take Cable down in X-Force as well. But we also have to remember that Henry Gyrich never did like mutants. He always felt like mutants were going to be a problem. So for him, hey, Cable is a mutant, he gotta go. He also tells us that Sebastian Shaw had gave Henry a lot of money to begin Project Wide Awake once again. Now, I'm not gonna sit down and explain about what that is for right now. I'm going to save that for a later video. Now for S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury and also G.W. Bridge, they're not really down with the idea of going after Cable until they're able to know what is his actual end game. Like, what is Cable trying to do? And once they're able to actually get that information, then they can decide if they should step in and bring him down or go ahead and let Cable do his own kind of thing. Now, Val Cooper, she's there because she also works for the government, but let's not forget, she does have her own government X-Men team. That would be X-Factor, except this time, X-Factor is not really up to par to call themselves a team, but also to go after X-Force. But let's jump back over to Toad, who's trying to bring back the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, where we see Toad kind of forcing Kyle to go through the actual process to turn back into his alter ego, Siren. And so you have to remember that the only way to kind of bring that alter ego out is to have him absorb life energy. Now, Kyle does not want to become his alter ego, but Toad said, nah, man, you are going to be that guy once again. And he forced Kyle to go ahead and absorb the life energy of his own wife, Kayla. She dies right there, but Siren does come back, and so now you have 3 members of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but we're not going to stop there. But now we can jump over to Strife as we dive into X-Factor issue number 6. Now for Strife, let's not forget that he is the leader for a group called the Mutant Liberation Front. Now, we're still learning more about the actual group, but we do know that their main goal is to apparently help out the mutant race, to fight back against the human race who are supposedly suppressing down the mutant race. Now with that being said, Strife also has other goals that will soon be revealed to us in later story arcs down the road, but he also tells us that even though you have all these new characters or new players in the mutant community who believe that they are the big movers in the actual mutant race, that he is still the #1 big mover, meaning that all his plans outweighs the other characters' plans when it comes to what's happening to the mutant race. We also see that when he does take off his helmet, once again we see Cable, but we already know this is not Cable. But let's get back over to the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and the reason why, because we see them currently in the tunnels of the Morlocks. Now remember, the Morlocks are a group of mutants who, unfortunately, when they had gained their mutant abilities, well, their bodies had changed to the point where they're no longer able to hide in public, so they hide in the tunnels of New York, the Morlock tunnels. Now, we see the Brotherhood trying to make a deal with the Morlocks, trying to bring both groups together to begin the process of having the mutant race get rid of the human race. Now, for Toad, he kind of looks at the Morlocks as like, okay, you guys are a group of mutants, and some of you guys are powerful, but like, you're just soldiers to me I need to have. Like, you're not big hitters. Now for Mask, he believes that his group is big hitters, but before you have the two sides being able to actually make a deal, you did have a new character appear, and her name is Thorne. And we're gonna learn a tad bit about Thorne in this video and her connection to Pharaoh. Now for Thorne, she says, if you want the Morlocks to join your side, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, you're gonna have to do us a favor. You see, while Mask was leader, he let someone go, and that person is Pharaoh, and we want her back. So if you are able to bring her back, dead or alive, that will be really great, and then we will actually help you guys out. We'll join your army. And matter of fact, you're gonna have some of the Morlocks help the Brotherhood to complete this mission. But now we have to jump over to Domino and Cable. Now, these pages right here really does show the idea that, there's something going on between Domino and Cable. Like, they might be friends with benefits, but you do have Domino bring up the idea of, hey, Cable, like, when are you going to tell the others about your actual origin? Like, I know your origin, but they don't know your origin. But for Cable, he's saying, when I feel like I am ready. But at the same time, he says Cannonball and Boom Boom are still too high almighty, meaning that they're still too goody two-shoes. They're not really like the other members of the X-Force, down with the idea of getting dirty when they're going up against their other enemies. So for him, that's a good enough reason to not actually tell them his actual origin. Now, something else we have to remember that in an earlier video we had did over X-Force, there was a moment where Pharell had almost killed off Cannonball because, well, she went feral and she went too far in one of their training sessions. So ever since that moment, Cannonball and Boom Boom have kind of been on edge around her. They don't like her. And really, you have Boom Boom express the idea that even though they're teammates, she does not have to like her at all. Now for Pharell, she does tell us that for Boom Boom kind of saying some hurtful things to her, that she had made a very huge mistake, which could possibly mean that we might see Pharell go, well, Pharell again on Boom Boom and Cannonball. Now, we do see another training session going on between Warpath and also Shadowstar. Now, the training session for me really shows that it's the beginning of these two characters trying to build a bond with one another. The reason why I'm saying that because you have Warpath trying to show Shadowstar that he can't go into every single battle like he's doing some kind of TV show. Because remember, Shadowstar comes from the Mojoverse, and the Mojoverse is really big on entertainment. And for Shadowstar, he was sometimes part of that entertainment. And so for Warpath, more of, you have to take things more seriously when we jump into battles. But for Warpath, more of, well, yeah, you're right, but at the same time, you are being driven right now by the flames of your anger because you're so mad about the idea of losing your tribe. That anger might get the best of you and could possibly lead into the moment where it could get you killed. Now, you do have Siren being able to jump in and have both guys stop, but why have the two guys talking being friends again? You didn't have the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants appear, and this begins the process of us jumping into the next chapter, X-Force issue number 7, where we see X-Force now fighting against the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but also fighting against some members of the Morlocks as well. Now, we have to remember that Warpath never truly met the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants because when he was on the Hellions, and really when we had the New Mutants, the Brotherhood did not really cross over with the New Mutants like they did with the X-Men. So for Warpath, he has no idea who in the world is Toad, Blob, Pyro, or what in the world is the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But luckily, you do have Siren being able to explain things to him. But either way, as we get into the opening pages for today's chapter, we actually see those three characters, Siren, Shadowstar, and Warpath, fighting against the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But there's something else going on behind the scenes. You see, while you have the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants fighting against those members of X-Force, you did have some members of the Morlocks being able to sneak their way into the base of X-Force, hoping to get close enough to take out Pharell, but also take out the other members of X-Force. Now, as soon as they are able to get inside, they're then confronted by, well, Cable and some other members of X-Force. Now, let's not forget that Thorne, one of the Morlocks, is actually the bigger sister to Pharell, and apparently there's a lot of bad blood between those two characters. Now, we are not technically told, like, hey, what is the big problem right now between Pharell and also Thorne? All we get the chance to know in this moment is that apparently they are sisters. But apparently, when it comes to Thorne, she always been picking on Pharell. And sometimes seems like she's trying to kill off Pharell. But these two characters do have a lot of bad blood between each other. And that bad blood really shows in this section right here, because the members of X-Force who are fighting against the Morlocks inside their base, the power gets turned off. And so unfortunately, our heroes are not really well equipped to fight in the dark, but the Morlocks, they are. And so you have Cable say, we have to get the heck out of here and take this battle topside so that we are able to see. But Pharell, she's not listening. And the reason why, because she wants to kill off her big sister. But the problem is, her big sister shows that she's just too much for Pharell to handle. And so unfortunately, Pharell does get taken out by Thorne, and it does seem like Thorne is about to kill off her little sister. Now, the ending for today's chapter is where I kind of want to end off for today's video. The whole idea of a cliffhanger, because once you have X-Force or some of the members of X-Force who were inside the base being able to get back outside, they're then confronted by Siren. And you have Cannonball trying his best to take on Siren, but unfortunately, he gets stabbed by one of Siren's wings. Had a hard time saying that. Either way, it now does seem like that Cannonball once again has been stabbed, but this time could possibly be dead. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.